So here are the reasons why you're scared to attack the ground when jumping. The number one thing is inhibition. The inhibition to whip your leg into the ground or land from a certain height and to continue that momentum. We have inhibition built into us that's very animalistic, is very human nature. If we were to fall out of a first-story building, we would disperse all that force. We would want as much of that force to be dissipated away from the major tissue or joints that are going to receive that enormous force. But where we come in with plyometrics and jumping training is we hope to blunt that inhibition. Blunt, I mean, really just reduce that down and to give us confidence in how we attack the floor. One of the fundamental parts of inhibition and why you don't want to attack the ground is actually landing skills. It's having the ability to time things effectively, it is to anticipate the floor well, and it's to have the proprioceptive awareness or awareness in space to know where you are, when you're going to hit the ground, at what velocity you're carrying through space, and then understanding what potentially could come after that. What is going to happen on the landing? So let's get into those specific skills. So what does it mean to anticipate the floor well? So in all of us, we hope to anticipate the floor by pre-activating the muscles around the major joints that are going to receive a lot of this force. We brace rapidly just before contact, and that enables us to actually maintain a little bit of stiffness and to be able to pivot through that movement effectively. So really that is the first starting point for that blunting inhibition, to stop us sinking and yielding that force and dispersing it. We want to use that energy to create the impulse. So as we're airborne, we hope to be relaxed enough to then create this anticipative quality. As we're falling, certain individuals, maybe a beginner, someone that's returning from injury, will actually start to anticipate a little too early. They might hold a brace position in the air, and it's almost that feeling where you're going to hit an impact. It could be if you're in a car crash, if you've ever experienced that, you'll brace. We want that brace to happen, but within a split second before you hit the ground. We don't want to carry too much tension for too long. We have to have this relax and contract ability to us. So you might ask, how do I build anticipation? You have to have a host of different movements that are in lower amplitudes and at sub-maximal intensities to make sure that you are building upon those skills. Your body needs to understand where it is in space, how much speed you're carrying, what it's going to be like when I put my foot down, and these lower intensities allow for a lot more learning to happen. It's really hard to learn at high intensities when the volumes are a lot lower and your focus really is solely on getting as much height or distance or speed as possible. So the sub-maximal intensities is where the anticipative qualities are going to come from. And unfortunately, that comes with time and extremely high volumes over periods of 6 months to a year or even 2 to 3 years. So the next one is looking at timing limb strike. Proprioceptive awareness gives us that ability to know where we are in space so that when we do come down to strike the ground, are we putting it in the right place? Are we uncoiling the leg at the right rate? And is that going to enable us to be as efficient as possible when we land? Because if we don't, we're really going to struggle with that inhibition. It's likely that if you are timing it incorrectly where your foot is maybe too far out in front of you, you're probably going to create a lot of braking action. And that braking action often equals a much higher eccentric loading on certain joints. So you might load the anterior portion of the knee, you might drop down into your hip, and this also can create inhibition. So we have to build proprioceptive awareness in a similar way that we've done to anticipation. We use a high volume of submaximal movements, but here we use them in more multi-directional ways. Now, when we're looking at uncoiling the leg as well, we also have to understand where we want to stack the body appropriately. And ultimately, we want to be as close to under the center of mass or underneath the hip as possible so that you can receive load in the tallest positions. When we want to pivot off the foot fast and reduce ground contact times to a point where we're able to maintain momentum, we have to stack our body really well. If you want to learn how to stack someone really well, observe world-class sprinting. The final point for landing skills are relax and contract abilities. What does that mean? It is the ability to hit a landing where you really are contracting and then being able to relax in the air. What you'll often find is that when you're really trying to send a landing, you're really trying to punch it up into the air, you're really quite tight and you carry a bit too much stiffness or too much anticipation into that. And this often kills the reflexive capacity of the tendons and tissue. And it actually is like fighting force with force. And our bodies really like to just find a slight yield in what we do. So it might be just a couple of degrees of flexion, but that enables us to stay, to a certain degree, relatively relaxed to then redirect the force in the way that we want. Watch world-class sprinting again. Watch how their cheeks shake in the air. That's because they're able to relax and contract effectively. Those that are slowing down are the ones that are tensing up. So in order to do so, we use movements that carry a little bit more of a yield. We can use deep tier movements to relax into the bottom of movements that do carry some overload and carry some velocity into those deeper ranges, but ultimately provide us the ability to also contract at the right time and relax at the right time. So my final point with this as well is, well, you haven't explained to us the physical side of this. You've talked about the skills and the development of those neuromuscular capacities in the body. Well, when we look at the physical side of things, we'll actually look to work on landing stiffness. And really it comes hand in hand with exposing the body to high volumes of landing. So we've hit that with the proprioceptive awareness and the anticipative qualities. And what this is going to do, it is going to thicken the tendons and it's going to teach the tendons and muscular tendinous unit to work in a way that is ultimately a little stiffer in the way that it moves. And over time, you're going to build a lot more of that capacity within the tissue to react in a much shorter, sharper way. If you're looking to improve that inhibition in you, you're looking to really just come away from feeling like you're having to dip your toe in water every time you put your foot down. You have to expose yourself to overload at speed. You have to use movements that ultimately open up your ability to create limb velocity. Using a hop is the perfect movement for that. There's really nowhere to hide when it comes to hopping. So with all of our work, we start very small. We start on our light tier movements with plus plyos and we gradually ramp that up to more intense movements. But really, until we can hit the ground with a little bit of conviction, I wouldn't progress to that next level. I would maintain that level of sub-maximal work within the program, keep a good volume of work in there, and ultimately you'll start to break down those inhibitions. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you on the next one.